Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show.
And today we're talking about using effects pedals with multi-channel amplifiers.
Very nice.
That sounds amazing.
Sounds awesome.
That sounds absolutely amazing.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello.
Okay, right. Interesting show today. We haven't done this before.
No, we haven't. We've been asked a lot for this. We've hinted at it in some VCQs and some other shows.
Before we get into it, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed.
Please do that.
Yeah, okay, right. We're away.
We're trying to remember to tell people to subscribe because it's really important. So
Yeah,
please
and
subscribe.
we don't do it, so...
No, it's hard to remember when there's all this finery of things happening. Right.
1 amp today.
Yeah, normally you'll know if you're a regular viewer of That Pedal Show. If you're not a regular viewer, welcome. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome to this world. You'll feel warm and fuzzy here, I hope. 1 amp. We're using one of my Mesa Lone Stars.
So this is the 1x12 version.
Yeah, there used to be a head.
Oh, really?
And then I got a 112 cab enclosure for it.
Right.
Just to make it like the, ultimate portable thing.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I haven't used it for ages because I
Yeah.
thought it had a fault and it didn't have a fault. It was a cross between me storing it badly for a while and a bit of user error.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, seeing as I've mentioned it, apparently the send and return on the effects loop, the jacks can oxidize a little bit.
Okay.
And the connection gets lost. So unless you have a patch lead plugged in
Right.
when the effects loop is turned on,
Okay.
so tip there for Lone Star users, what I need to do is have it repaired properly.
Right.
Anyway, it's pretty old. It's a good 15 years old, I would say,
Oh, wow, okay.
the chassis of that amp. So,
Right.
And it was stored damp for 2 years.
Okay.
Bad boy.
In the bath.
Anyway, it's sounding glorious today.
It is sounding magical.
And we're using this amp because it's one of the only 2-channel amps that Dan and I own between us. Most of the amps we own are single-channel amps, or at least they are multi-channel amps in a more vintage sense.
Yes.
So if you think about something like a Vox AC15 or AC30, or a Marshall Plexi, or pretty
Matchless.
much, matchless, any Fender Tweed amp, or most Fender Tweed amps, most Fender Blackface amps, most of those amps that you think are single channel are actually dual channels, but they're not channel switching, right? So in order to use the 2 channels, you need to physically unplug or plug into the other one, or use some sort of AB box, which is a whole other world, which we're not getting into. So it's apt that we use the Mesa because Mesa was, if not the first, and I think they were the first, but certainly among the very first companies to ever do a channel switching amp.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So what was the call? So why did they say, right, we need another channel in the amplifier?
Yeah, right. So why have a channel switching amplifier? Why have a multi-channel channel switching amplifier? Because you either want an overdrive sound or a clean sound.
Right. So people were plugging in going, I really like it here, but I also like it here.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if I could have that clean sound back?
Okay. Right.
After we've spent the last 20-something years of amplifier development trying to make it more distorted.
Okay.
Or realising how brilliant it sounded when it was more distorted. Now what we would really like is the clean thing back again.
Sure.
So, yeah, and it makes sense, doesn't it? And I had a quick look earlier, because Dan and I, as we said at the top of the show, don't really use multi-channel amps
No.
because this is our multi-channel amp.
Yeah, well, if you have a really dynamic, sensitive single channel amplifier, what you can do with pedals is pretty special.
Do I use dynamic and sensitive singles? Sounds like a Tinder ad.
Grinder. Right. So, yeah. So, if, for example, I mean, any of the amps we use, but the high watt's a really great example. Massive, loud, clean headroom, but it still has a lot of character, and plugging gain stages into that, gets the most out of the pedals. That sort of amplifier. And then, you with the 2-Rock and me with the Matchless, we've found amplifiers that we both really connect with personally, and so we've tailored the pedals that we use with those amplifiers. But the multi-channel thing, it's like the overdrive channel on this. It sounds glorious, but there are pros and cons either way. This definitely has some things to be discussed.
There are some huge questions there. Lots of people argue till they're blue in the face about whether amp distortion sounds better than pedal distortion and all that. That's for the birds, because it's really it's a personal preference, and clearly some sounds are amp distortion and some sounds are pedal distortion. Let's not forget that when channel switching amps were invented, none of this was available.
Yeah.
So in the mid-late 70s or whenever it was, and really throughout pretty much the whole of the 80s and most of the 90s, there weren't that many pedals around.
Sure.
There was a few Boss overdrives, there was Maxon, there was Dodd, there was, the classic brands, but there wasn't this plethora of pedals that are available now. So it was absolutely entirely sensible to get a multi-channel, channel switching, versatile amplifier, so you could get really awesome distortion made with valves.
Yeah.
Or not, if you didn't have a valve amp. But time's moved on. There are lots of overdrive pedals and other pedals available now. So what happens when you take your pedal board and you stick it in to a multi-channel amp? It's actually a 2-channel amp. What happens when you go from that clean channel to an overdrive channel? What do you need to look out for? What are the opportunities for you, and what are the pitfalls?
All right, great question.
And this is interesting for us because it used to be my world.
Sure.
And isn't really anymore. So it'll be interesting to walk through it.
Okay, well, let's have a listen to the amp then. So let's have a listen to the clean channel and the dirty channel.
Yep.
And just so we get a reference point.
Cool. So here's the clean channel.
And that's amp reverb.
Amp reverb. Yeah, we might turn that down in a bit. This guitar needs to set up down. Bit of fret buzz.
Okay.
No worries. And here's the dirty channel. Hit that with some tellywanging. And the clean channel. Same with some humbuckers.
That's pretty righteous.
Quite a, how many guitars did we play? 3
Yep.
guitars. I am just going to turn the reverb down a little bit.
Okay.
Massive range of sounds,
Yeah.
and we haven't even touched the amp. It's set in the gain channel. It's set to kind of gainy enough.
Right.
It will go a bit gainier than that. In fact, it will go quite a lot gainier than that. But I
Right.
think that's enough overdrive, isn't it?
I think for what we're going to do, yeah,
Yeah,
there's plenty.
yeah.
So this is, and when you get to like the multi-channel, like the 3-channel amplifiers, you're setting different levels of gain. So if you wanted that sound, but then another one, so because there's another Mesa Boogie amp that does the
There have been lots over the years.
right.
Yeah, so the Mark 4s and Mark 5s have lots and lots of extra gain. Rectifiers, quite often the later ones were 3-channel. In fact, I think they were all either 3-mode or 3-channel.
Right.
And then on through the years, PV 6505. You know, so many amps are multi-channel
Sure.
switching amps. Marshalls, whatever their mid-range 1500 watt is now. JVM is it or something like that?
I guess it's worth pointing out the difference between a multi-channel amplifier and an amplifier that puts like another gain stage in on
Yeah.
top of the normal channel. So like an amp like this, they're completely separate preamps.
2 separate channels.
Yep. So the preamps are voiced differently.
Yep.
You know, they're just feeding into the same power section.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, it's like you know some amplifiers that has a switchable boost
Yeah.
on it that just puts another like a gain stage into the
Yes.
same preamp.
Yeah, this has that actually. It has a switch on the front panel there where you can switch in an extra bit of
Oh, cool.
extra half a valve, I'm guessing it is.
Right.
Which is usually the way it works in amps. Victories do that as well, where you go from like one mode to another mode, and
Right.
it's doing exactly what you just said, switching another. But these are 2 entirely separate channels.
Yep. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the pitfalls? What are things to look out for when we're doing
Well, why don't we just start by demonstrating some stuff?
Okay.
We're going to run through boost, overdrive, delay and reverb, and a little bit about modulation, and then we're going to talk a little bit about effects loops, which will come up in that discussion.
Okay.
Shall we start with boost,
Yeah,
Dan?
let's do it. Let's do it.
Some of this information will not be in any way new to you. Some of it might be. So, however that shakes down. Okay, what we've got on here is the Metropolis Super Boost, which is an FET-based booster with something similar to a Marshall tone stack in it.
Nice.
It is designed as a clean boost. So if we stay on the clean channel,
Okay. That is absolutely gorgeous.
keep going.
Beautiful.
All of the getting up and sitting down was about, and this is going to be the central topic of our whole discussion, was about gain.
Yeah.
So the clean channel of the Lone Star was set kind of on the edge of the point where when you push it with a level in the front, it starts to overdrive a bit.
Okay.
So what you heard was a moderate increase in volume, but not a huge increase in volume when we turned the boost on. I then turned the gain down in the amp so it's cleaner.
Right.
Turn the master volume up. And then what happens is the boost makes a much bigger difference.
Sure. So the amp isn't limiting.
Yeah. So, as you would expect, it's called a boost. You step on it, it gets louder, right? Now watch what happens when we do exactly the same thing in the gain channel.
Delicious.
Sounds great. Sounds really great, but doesn't get much louder.
Right. And it's an increasing gain.
Yeah.
So obviously it's an increasing gain in the clean channel, but that went from drive to a bit more fuzzy feeling under the fingers. Yeah. And you just feel the amp squashing in a bit.
Yeah. Let's just have a quick play of that with humbuckers a minute on the clean channel. This will probably be a bit eye-popping, but we'll see.
Substantial.
According to the dB meter, somewhere between 8 and 10
Right.
lift.
Wow.
At that level. Let's try that in the overdrive channel. Still a lift,
Yep.
but not as much lift.
Right.
Now watch happens if you turn the gain up, right, in the amp. So this is getting it really overdriving. I mean, this is going to be really obvious to a lot of people, but the boost into the clean channel makes it much louder, and the boost into the overdrive channel doesn't make it much louder.
Sure.
Just makes it thicker.
Yeah.
So there you are with your boost on your pedal board, and you're saying, well, in this channel it really works well, and in this channel it really doesn't work well. That all compounds when we get to overdrive.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Should we have a listen to that?
Yep. Okay, so we have
So you heard the D&M drive go from, or at least the amp go from super clean and spanky to really overdriven. Just have a bit more of that, Dan. We'll do exactly the same thing into the overdrive channel of the amp.
Really hard to control. There's so much gain there.
So much gain, yeah. And again, that's with the amp not set massively gainy. If we just increase the amp's gain a bit more.
Oh boy.
So let's just try that. I've made the preamp thicker.
Okay.
It's got a little switch on it, and turn the gain up.
Okay.
So now the gain channel sounds like this.
Like uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have read lots of comments. We've read lots of comments in the TPS comment list in YouTube where people can be surprised when the pedal doesn't do exactly the same thing.
From one channel to the other.
Yeah. And of course that's equally applicable to different amps.
Sure.
That's why Dan and I are always talking about the fact that you talk about how a pedal sounds, but it's really doesn't make any sense unless you're talking about what amp you're using it with.
Exactly.
I think there's a really interesting point there, behind all the debate about whether valve overdrive is better or whether amp channels are better than pedals, just try and put all that to one side. And if it helps you get your head around it, maybe think about the gain channel in your amp like another pedal.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's, it'll become more apparent later when we start talking about where that channel sits as far as the other effects is concerned. Because at the moment we're plugging things straight into the front. But that preamp then is plugged into the power amplifier. So it's another gain stage, as the other pedals we've been using thus far are gain stages. So yeah, when I first started setting up rigs for people and looking at doing, effects in the loop and all that sort of stuff, just thinking about the preamp just as another pedal solves all those issues about routing and stuff for me.
Yeah. And if that offends you as a valve amp overdrive diehard, think about it as another lovely valve preamp.
There you go.
Which is
think about your pedals as a valve preamp.
Yeah. So before we move on, because that's going to be the next topic of discussion about effects loops and delay and reverb and all of that.
Sure.
So before we do that, I think probably the useful kind of summary of that section is, instead of saying, my overdrive pedal that I really love in the clean channel of my amp, I really don't like it into the dirty channel. I think that just provides a great opportunity to just treat the dirty channel differently and do something else.
It has to be
in the dirty channel.
Yeah, because it reacts so differently.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use the dirty channel and you want to boost it, you've got to think differently about it than the way you boost your clean channel.
Yeah, I mean, let's just do that for a second. If you want to know more about this, a couple of weeks ago we did a show pretty much entirely on boosts.
Yeah.
And we talked about boosts and how they work with overdrives and how they work with gainy amps and clean amps and all the rest of it. So there's a lot more information there. But just to make the point, what we want to do is juice up our overdrive channel, right?
Yep.
So I'm just going to play this with some humbuckers into a fairly gained sound, and you'll get to hear what the overdrive channel of the amp sounds like. And as we proved earlier, if we try and put the D&M drive into that, it's just going to be uncontrollable. Not great. So let's use the boost instead.
Yep.
because it's not creating much gain. It's just a level boost.
Yeah.
It's pushing the amp and not cloaking everything in.
But what we can do as well, because there's EQ on here,
Yep.
you know, perfect example of where like things like treble boosters are so good with it sound like that. So if we just dial down the bass a little bit.
Yep. This is the bass.
That's the bottom end. That's
you want
it.
to play and I'll do that?
Sure. Great. So it doesn't get, you know, it just tightens that, you know, up a little bit because they're so, the amp is limiting so much already that, you know, trying to put bottom end frequencies into that does tend to turn things to mush. So, you know, a good thing to if you're looking to reduce that, the dirty channel, things like a booster with EQ or a treble booster or a tube screamer, something that shapes the bottom end, a clon.
Clon is a great one for a dirty channel.
Check out the video we did a few weeks ago with Lee Malia from Bring Me the Horizon. JCM 800 just cranked to the heavens, and then he kicks the clon in, and it's heavenly.
Just tightens it and focuses it.
Yep.
And in that respect, you know, then you're thinking about, not everyone wants to carry around a giant board, but you know, it might be that you've got a couple overdrive pedals that work really great in the clean channel, and you've got a couple boosts and other little shapers that work better. In the overdrive, and it's almost like you've got two amps at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, let's move on to reverb and delay then, because this is, I think, where it gets really chewy for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Dan and I use fairly high headroom amps, and we put everything in the front of the amp because the reverb and delay in that chain of events is happening after the overdrive, right?
Yep.
Because the overdrive is here in the D&M drive, and the reverb and delay is happening after in the chain before it hits a relatively clean amp.
Yes.
The problem you encounter when you go to the dirty channel of the amp, you're essentially taking your overdrive and you're putting it after the delay and the reverb, which can be a great sound, but it's not traditionally considered to be a nice, I mean, all these adjectives don't really work, but
there's a massive tonal difference if you have your overdrive sound and then you put your reverb and delay on after it, you retain the essence of your overdrive sound, and that the reverb and delay sort of sit on top. The other way around is a whole different thing.
Yeah, a whole other cool thing, but not perhaps what everyone's going for.
Sure.
Should we have a little listen to that?
Okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. So if we have listened to the so we've got the collider delay and reverb, and this is going into the front of the amplifier.
really beautiful sound.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay.
Shall we hit the overdrive channel?
Yep. So now that's a cool sound.
Yeah.
Stephen Wilson does it like that. He puts everything in the front of his overdrive. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the delay and reverb after the preamp. Okay?
Which means in the effects loop.
Exactly. So now the guitar is going into the amplifier. It's hitting the preamp. It's coming back out. It's hitting the collider. And then out of the collider back to the power amplifier.
So yeah, there we've got the delay and the reverb after the overdrive, and the amp is creating the overdrive.
Yes.
Just for fun,
Yes.
let's now make the D&M drive create the overdrive,
Yes.
and we'll put the reverb and delay in the loop and not in the loop, and watch it not make a massive amount of difference.
Yeah,
hopefully,
great idea.
Hopefully.
Great idea. So here is the so now we have everything going into the front of the amplifier.
And instead of using the amps overdrive, we're now using the D&M drive for the overdrive. Yeah.
Sure. Right? Same thing with the delay now in the loop. So the when it's in the loop, it still has more headroom than the preamp, but it's not the difference that we heard.
No, it's the differences are much more slight, and now the differentiator is what level your loop is running at.
Yeah, right.
And I think the return on that loop is set slightly above unity.
Right. Okay.
Because there was more obvious effect
with the loop
on.
Okay.
So I think, as we mentioned earlier, an effects loop in an amp is driven and recovered using a circuit of some description that requires amplification.
And every amp's going to be different.
Or requires driving anyway. And this one uses a valve to do that.
Right.
So you can then affect the level. Hopefully that is a fairly simple but quick demonstration of why Dan and I don't really use effects loops because we use clean amps, and they're not really required because your overdrive is coming from a pedal. It's hitting the delay and reverb and hitting the front of an amp that's set pretty clean.
Yeah.
A little bit of overdrive can be quite a nice thing, but that's a whole other world.
Yeah.
The minute you go to using any gain in the amp, you kind of need an effects loop.
Yeah, you've got to really...
If you don't want that shoegazy, that particular drive drive after reverb and delay sound.
Yeah, you've got to really think about if that's what you want, then yeah.
And to just to hammer that point home, and apologies if this is oversimplistic, but just think about it in terms of signal chain. Overdrive, delay and reverb, right? Overdrive first, delay and reverb second. And by using the dirty channel in your amp, all you're doing is you're taking the overdrive, putting it after the delay and the reverb.
Yeah. It's
just like exactly the same as if you were to order it that way on your pedal board.
Yeah.
And that is a source of so much confusion for so many people.
That's great. That's a great example.
That worked, didn't it?
Yeah, really good. Really
Okay.
good.
Effects loops. We need to do a whole show on effects loops.
Yeah. Because it's complicated. There's so many different options. There's so many different designs. There's some really good ones and there's some quite poor ones.
Yeah, it's a bit like saying overdrive pedal, isn't it? It can be done in so many different ways, and some of the things that it throws up.
So line level, right? We've got the preamp, and that's sending the signal to the pedal. And the signal from a preamp is high. So things like analog delay is meant for an instrument level, but it's not designed to take a line level input.
Right. It's a massive topic, and we should come back to it because all effects loops, as Dan suggested, are definitely not created equal. What are the takeaways? If you find your effects sound weak, effects loop needs more level.
Right.
And some, like this amp, have a level control.
This is a very good loop in this amplifier.
It's exceptional, like most things Boogie do. This Marshall 1987X that I'm pointing to on my right-hand side here has one of the worst effects loops I've ever heard.
Right.
That does actually have a level switch for +4 and -10, which you might recognise as professional and consumer level line.
Right.
And some amps don't have any level control at all.
Right.
So if your pedals are too loud or not loud enough, you've got to do other things to make that work in your effects loop. Most guitar amps these days are instrument level, and it kind of works.
Right.
But then you run 40 feet of cable, and you've got a bunch of true bypass pedals, and then you need a buffer, and it's a whole other thing that we should come back to.
Yeah, sure. So let's have a listen to the analog delay into the dirty channel, but we'll put the dirty channel before and then after as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's going to go into the front of the dirty channel and then sit in the effects loop.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So, dirty channel, please, sir.
Ready?
Yep.
So one of those, the delay was much louder.
Because you got it on instrument level here, it's actually like normally, well, quite often with a line level, an analog delay won't handle the line level and it'll just sound distorted.
And that's the common problem that a lot of people have. When you switch from one channel to the other, the level of your delays and reverbs can jump massively because of that, because they're receiving more signal.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Ways around that. On this should be in the loop show, but a lot of delays and reverbs will have a mix knob where you can mix the dry signal and the wet signal, run a lower mix.
And some also have instrument and line level actually on the pedals themselves. If you've got a loop that doesn't give you the option, you can set it there.
But that'll be an interesting show, that.
Yeah, definitely.
Watch us cringe all the way through it. Okay. Modulation then.
We've got the Ripley Fall on here that has a phaser and a chorus in it. Now, it's really interesting because, I don't know if it's exactly split, but there's a lot of people who prefer their modulation before the gain stages, and a lot of people who prefer it after the gain stage. So it's about finding a modulation that will work. If you're a 2-channel amp guy, finding one that'll work for both. Unless, of course, you just want it in the front. A la Van Halen.
Yeah. Robin Trower likes his Univibe before his overdrive.
Right.
So what are we going to do? We're going to hear it before and after the amp's overdrive then?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do that. So if you want to have schwungage,
I will.
Okay.
Actually, I might change guitars again, if you
Okay.
don't mind, Dan. Just to, mix it up.
I'm impressed with your consistency in changing guitars.
Well, to all friends of that pedal show who moan that we don't switch between single coils and humbuckers enough, I'm trying to be in the game.
You're doing much better than I am. I'm quite comfortable.
Cool.
Right, here you go.
Yep.
So we heard it there in the clean channel, before the preamp and after the preamp. So in the loop and in the front. Basically the same.
Very marginal
Yep.
difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now, if we go back to
Yep.
dirty channel.
Dirty channel. Quite a different response in the I could hear much more pronounced top end in the phase in one of the options.
Yeah, it's really funny. When it goes to the front of the amplifier, you hear the chorus more. When it goes into the loop, the phaser seems to stand out. Really cool.
Just get a bit more depth on the chorus then. Let's see if that.
I mean, both cool. The big advantage that we have is the loop on this amplifier.
Right.
Because, like, normally, quite often, because the level send is so high, especially with analog effects, it hits them so hard. But the clever thing with this amp is that you're actually able to pull that back down to a level and then recover it.
Yeah.
But again, so what we're hearing there is the difference in the gain staging.
Yeah.
With the gain staging before or after.
That's all it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Again, we will, at the risk of repeating things, all of those debates about whether amp distortion sounds better than pedal distortion and all of that is not the question. The question is signal chain and whether you like your effects before or after overdrive.
Yeah.
And that's what the effects loop brings you. Those are the issues you face when you use a 2-channel amp, because all your pedals here at the front into the clean channel, everything is going into clean. Your delays and reverbs remain after overdrive because all the overdrive's on the board. You switch to the dirty channel, all of a sudden all your delays and reverbs are before overdrive, unless you put them in the effects loop. I'm not quite sure why we've been struggling with it for so long, Dan, because it is that simple, isn't it?
It is. I tell you why it's struggling, because it's the black hole of the effects loop.
Yeah.
Because there's so vastly different in the designs and stuff. And You know, there's some great ones out there. That's great. Anything David Freeman puts a
Yeah.
effects loop in is great. But there's some ones that are, you know, you're going to have any issues like this times
Yeah.
lots.
You will struggle.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity here for anyone struggling with this is to just view the overdrive channel of your amp
As another pedal.
as another amp
Yeah.
or another pedal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or if you're predominantly using the gain channel of your amp and you don't really use the clean channel very much, you know, just view the other one as a whole, almost like a whole other amp.
Yeah, right.
And think about it in those terms so
Yep.
that you can apply effects likewise. And maybe just accept the fact that your D&M drive doesn't sound great into a heavily
Distorted.
gained amp,
Yeah.
in your opinion. It will
Yeah.
for some people, but in your opinion. And go, well, okay, I need to shape this in another way. Maybe I can use something else to do that. I think the reason I stopped using 2-channel amps was because I just found I could get everything I needed off the board.
Yeah.
And maybe that the overdrive channel in the amp itself, I preferred something that I could get from a pedal,
Yeah.
or it was more switching or something.
I'm
or
similar.
whatever.
I'm similar. I never found... I found amps that had great clean channels but not great overdrive channels, and then vice versa. I never found the perfect combination. But then when I discovered, you know, AC30s and things, I found that I could get exactly what I was after with the cab to the amplifier. But the other thing is, when I was, you know, played around with putting things in loops, I found that I liked the way that the first gain stage of a clean amplifier added a little bit more warmth
Yes.
and sort of integrated things a little bit more closer than things going directly into the power stage of an amplifier.
Yeah.
You know, but some people love that. Some people love that really hi-fi type thing, you know, you know, but for me, I really love that what the gain stage does, that first gain stage in a clean amp to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about reframing the debate, isn't it?
Yep.
From what is better to what's going to work for me, and can I understand why it's going to work for me?
Sure.
In the great traditions of TPS, no answers, only better questions, right?
Very good. Very good.
One last thing to say on channel switching amplifiers, we won't demonstrate it, doesn't really need demonstrating, is sometimes in your amp, when you switch the channel, it can flip the phase.
Yes.
So in the clean channel, you're in this phase, and in the overdrive channel, you're in this phase. If you're running wet dry and you are using 2 amps and you switch channels, that's going to cause you a massive problem,
Yes.
because all of a sudden your amps are going to be out of phase. So just bear that in mind for anyone running 2 amp setups or wet dry, if indeed your amp does flip the phase when you change channels. But it's something to look out for.
Very good point. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Also, a massive thank you to everyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed t-shirts and pencils and hats and
Strings,
strings and
mugs,
pedals and
T-shirts.
stuff, all there. Also, our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is,
Anderson's Music of Guildford in Surrey,
and in Australia.
Pedal Empire of Brisbane, Queensland.
And if any of these things look attractive to you and you decide to check out those guys, or check out the links in the description below, and that helps us fund the show.
Yes, click the links.
Perfect. Cheers, guys. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye.